This is Mental Health with Gregory Scott Brown, MD, a podcast devoted to exploring innovative ideas from unlikely advocates for mental wellness. Let us work together to reduce stigma, broaden access to care, and bridge gaps in understanding by refusing to shy away from difficult conversations. In this pursuit, we can promote natural and accessible wellness moving forward. Thank you for joining. Here is Gregory Scott Brown.
Shaka Smart enters his fourth season as the head basketball coach at the University of Texas in 2018-2019. The leader of a Virginia Commonwealth University program that advanced to the 2011 Final Four and posted at least 26 wins in each of his 6 seasons at the school, Smart became the 24th head basketball coach at Texas on April 3, 2015. In 9 seasons overall as a collegiate head coach, the 41-year-old Smart has compiled a 66.8% record. 7 of his 9 teams have advanced to NCAA tournament play. Under Smart's direction, the mission of the Texas basketball program is clear and simple: to create and sustain championship-level success. Smart and his staff want to develop each student-athlete within the program into the best possible version of himself. The 3 core values of the Texas basketball program are relationships, growth, and victory. I'm so happy to be here on the campus of the University of Texas at Austin with Coach Shaka Smart. Coach, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
We're here today to talk about student-athlete mental health. As an NCAA coach, why is this an important and timely topic?
I think it's an important topic all the time, but particularly in this day and age when athletes are dealing with more, I would say, noise than they've ever dealt with in the past. It's really become a 24-hour day with social media, with the print media, the internet media, and the expectations, the pressure, the anxiety that can build and that can come out of that noise obviously can impact mental health. And as you know, mental health can impact everything else in the rest of your life.
Now, that's absolutely right. Now, there's some evidence out there that suggests that students who engage in college sports have lower rates of depression than the broader student body. Some might take that a step further to suggest that students who are engaging in college athletics are not as susceptible to mental illness as other students. What are your thoughts about this idea?
Well, I think everyone's susceptible. And again, I think anytime you're participating in an activity where there's a lot of interest and there's a lot of scrutiny, there can be factors of anxiety and pressure, even depression. A phrase that we use all the time in our program is a quote from President Teddy Roosevelt, which is, "Comparison is the thief of joy." Mm-hmm. And I think in today's world, there's more comparison than ever. Mm-hmm. Again, with the internet, with social media, with all the tools that we have to access information, people are constantly comparing themselves to others. And when you're in the athletic realm, let's face it, it's a competitive world, and it's one in which you're trying to be better than other players or other teams. You're trying to run a faster time or swim a faster time or jump higher or score more points. So that certainly can lead to more and more comparison. And I think that can take away from guys focusing on being the best version of themselves.
Now, in psychiatry, we consider that between the ages of 16 and 26 occurs a transitional period in our lives. While the attention that comes along with leaving high school to become a Division I athlete is an exciting time, studies indicate that rates of depression for college athletes is between about 15 and 20%, with freshman athletes at substantial risk. In your view, what makes this transition particularly difficult for student athletes, and what can we do collectively to support overall wellness during this time?
I think that's a great question, and it's something that's always on our minds as coaches, because every year we have a new group of guys that comes in from high school, and as we always say, they don't know what they don't know. So they're coming in, and as you mentioned, they're really excited about being at UT. They're really excited about playing basketball at the college level. Most of them come in with very good academic preparation, but they don't really understand some of the roadblocks and obstacles that will be in their way as they strive towards success on the court and off the court. So our job is to help them navigate that terrain and help them understand the habits and the style of behavior that's going to help them to be successful. We believe that when you consolidate good habits and the right behaviors, that leads to good performance, again, both on and off the court. But those are things that aren't necessarily in place before they get to college. And so when you talk about mental health concerns, sometimes those come about because maybe young people don't feel like they're ready to do all the things that you want them to do or that they need to do.
Absolutely. And, I believe that there's so many life lessons to be learned from basketball. Along those lines, a recent article published in the American Journal of Psychiatry that reviewed 49 studies supports the idea that physical activity in general is a protective factor against depression, regardless of age, which could mean that engaging in sports like basketball is not only beneficial for the body, but the mind as well. On a broader scale, Coach, what does basketball mean to you, and what might the game teach us about life?
Well, I think what you're talking about is participating in physical activity, which is always a good thing for people of any age, and our guys certainly do a lot of that. But when you talk about mental health, now you bring in some of the mental, psychological, emotional factors that go along with being someone that's expected to perform at a high level. In terms of the game of basketball, you have to remember it started out for all of us as a fun game for kids.
Absolutely.
And something that we remind our guys of all the time is, hey, this is fun. This is something that we love doing, and it's something that we love being a part of. Anytime you're on a team, we heard this from LeBron recently, mm-hmm. You're committing to something larger than yourself. That's part of being on a team. As LeBron said, if you don't want to do that, play golf, play tennis. And I thought that was a terrific point by him, because sometimes that gets lost in our sport. It's a fascinating sport because it is a consummate team game, but at the same time, it's so much marketed by the individual in a lot of ways. You take the best player on the team and you put him up on a pedestal, or you see him on TV, and that's just kind of how it works. But at the end of the day, the best team is the one that comes out ahead.
Yeah, basketball is something that's very important to me as well. I mean, I grew up playing basketball, and for me, it was all about resilience. That's probably the biggest thing I've taken away from basketball. You don't necessarily have to be the most athletic. You don't have to be the tallest guy on the team. But if you're resilient, if you have that drive, that determination, I mean, that is a lesson that you can carry with you throughout the rest of your life. And even as a doctor, I mean, I have oftentimes reflected on my time as a kid playing basketball and the role that resilience played in that. How do you feel about that idea?
Well, it's something that I think is a huge part of athletics, and it's an advantage that young people have that have participated in team sports compared to people that haven't. Mm-hmm. That's why you look at so many Fortune 500 companies and they love hiring people that were athletes in college, particularly athletes at a place like UT, where you have to achieve at a high level academically, and then you're also around a level of competition, at least for the college level, that's as high as it gets. So I think you're exactly right. The resiliency piece is something that not a lot of people have in spades when they're 18 years old.
Sure.
And it's something that we try over time to build. And really, experience is the best teacher.
Absolutely.
Having been through an experience before or a specific situation before, it really, really benefits guys. And that's why you see at the college level in basketball, a lot of players take a huge jump in between their freshman and their sophomore year. The confidence goes up, the fact that they've been there and they've done that. And now as they enter into their second season, their level of resiliency goes way up just because they've done it before.
Yeah, and earlier you mentioned LeBron, so let's talk about a different NBA player now. Earlier this year, NBA All-Star forward Kevin Love penned an article for the Players Tribune that garnered a lot of positive attention. I love this. It begins, and I quote, "On November 5th, right after halftime against the Hawks, I had a panic attack," end quote. I thought this was a beautiful moment for basketball. What was your initial reaction to this and its implications for student athletes?
Well, I thought it was a really, really good article. I thought it said a lot about Kevin Love in terms of his willingness to share something that is extremely personal and to expose a level of vulnerability that, let's be honest, a lot of people are not willing to expose. One of the things about sports, especially on the men's side, is, traditionally young boys and young men are taught a certain definition of masculinity that actually goes completely against what Kevin Love was admitting to.
Yeah, and this is a guy who's 6'11".
6'11", was one of the best players at the high school level, was a very, very high draft pick out of college, and has been an NBA All-Star many times. But basically, he is admitting in this article that it was something that I needed to seek help for. I couldn't just, quote unquote, be a man and tough it out. And obviously, he's exactly right. It's something that millions of people deal with, whether they're athletes or not. But athletes are not immune from this challenge. And in fact, as we've spoken about, athletes have unique challenges just because of some of the pressures and anxieties that they find themselves feeling based on the sport they play.
And this is of concern. According to the evidence, one of the possible reasons student athletes in particular report avoiding help for mental health is actually fear that coaches and administration may not be supportive. What would you say to these student athletes?
I get it. I completely understand. Again, you have to remember the way that we've defined masculinity in this country for years and years and years, particularly in sports like football and basketball, is be tough, be a man, don't admit when you're feeling down, don't ask for help, don't show emotion.
Yeah.
And so I can see why athletes feel that way. Hopefully we're moving towards a day and age when, because of the Kevin Loves and people like that, it is more acceptable to communicate how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And, for me, I want our guys to let us know everything that they're going through and how they're feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very well said. Coach, I advocate passionately for green psychiatry, the idea that supports nutrition, exercise, and healthy lifestyle in conjunction with psychiatric medication when needed and traditional psychotherapy. What are your thoughts on the therapeutic value of basketball?
Well, to your point about the green psychiatry, and I never heard that term.
Yeah.
But I completely agree that, what we're talking about is whole people. Mm-hmm. And so if you're dealing with a whole person, you cannot cut him or her up into pieces or into parts and say, okay, here's your athletic part and here's your family part and here's your academic part and here's the emotional part. They're all related.
Sure.
So to me, it's all about how can we best help the whole person be his best, in our case, in men's basketball. How can we help our guys be in the best possible place to make the most of the experience they have and on the court to perform the way that they can perform when the moment requires it. So the role of psychiatry in that, it depends on the player. I think the first step is, as you mentioned, trying to get people in general and then specific people, specific players, to be much more open about receiving that help. When you talk about medication, it's a slippery slope, because there's some people that would say that's something that is a crutch for finding other ways to treat maybe what you're dealing with. There's some people that would say, hey, this is really, really helpful. And I think that's where you got to make it specific to the individual.
I'm delighted you pointed that out, and I actually think that's very well said. Now, this next question I'm asking all my guests because I believe that mental illness is not simply a psychiatry problem, but a broader public health issue, and that we should all be involved in brainstorming ideas to improve and promote mental wellness. So with this idea in mind, what would you say to psychiatrists looking for innovative ideas on how to improve mental wellness in the community from your own perspective as an NCAA coach with influence?
That's a great question. I think the first thing is just understanding, I think on a societal level, that people have mental health issues, and they're not necessarily as cut and dry or black and white as a broken arm, but they're just as real.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that more and more people are able to say, hey, this is something that I've dealt with, this is something that a family member of mine has dealt with, that makes it more okay. Sure. That this is something for us to spend time on. I believe that we need to start much younger with treating these sorts of disorders. I think, to me, it's like anything else. We talk about prevention coming before treatment. So to me, kids in school there should be quite a bit of time spent on having more of an awareness of how you're feeling, being more in touch with one's own thoughts, one's own emotions. I also believe kids should be taught from a young age to really pay close attention to the small gap that exists between what they're thinking and what they're feeling and what happens in the world and who they really are.
Yeah.
And I think when that gap disappears, that's when we get in trouble. Because that's when we get really identified with, in the sports realm, our last result, or in the academic realm, how we're doing in a class. And so that's really where it's interesting. You see multiple fields kind of blending together. Obviously psychiatry, but also the fields of meditation and mindfulness, yoga, teaching different fields within psychiatry or psychology is really interesting to me.
I agree, Coach, and I think you got that right on point. This idea that we're somehow innately all able to identify our emotions is just not true. And some people end up taking years and years and years of psychotherapy in order to be able to do that. So I agree that if we started from an earlier age, not just at home, but also in our schools, pointing out some of those situations where we might not be able to, connect our thoughts with our feelings, with our behaviors, I think it might end up paying off in the long run for sure.
Again, it flies in the face of what a lot of us were taught from a young age. I have a daughter that's 6. And to me, and again, I don't want to step on the toes of any educators, but if I was starting a school curriculum for young kids, I would make sure it is heavy with this stuff that we're talking about, just to help kids understand how to really acknowledge what they're feeling, what they're thinking, how to separate emotions and experiences and thoughts from the essence of who they really are. That's a powerful tool to have well before you get to college.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. And here we are, Coach, at the beginning of August. What are you up to these days?
Coaching our guys. Our players have been on campus all summer. They have a short time left finishing summer school. Then they get to go home for a little while. But we're working on helping them move forward in all areas. Obviously basketball, but also the academic side. They're all in class. Their bodies, their minds. As it relates to their development, we kind of put it in a triangle. Bodies, minds, and then their game. And we really have to make sure as a coaching staff and working with our guys individually or collectively that mind part does not get ignored. So we spend a lot of time on that in the off season.
Taking care of the body, the mind, and the game, great values to instill with your student athletes. Thank you, Coach Smart, for an informative conversation. I am so happy we were able to discuss some very important issues today. And as a Longhorn fan, I wish you and the team all the best for the upcoming season.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Thank you so much. Despite the rigors of college sports, I believe that engaging in a supportive community through sports can be beneficial for overall health and wellness. When athletes do struggle, it is important that we are sensitive to the unique challenges they face. The NCAA has provided a coach assist for empathic response training to provide coaches with tools to discuss mental wellness with student athletes. The NCAA has also supported a book called Mind, Body, and Spirit, Understanding and Supporting Student Athlete Mental Wellness that is available for download on ncapublications.com. I believe that change starts with ideas, which then blossom to progressive conversations, realizing that all of us play a significant role despite how reserved or quiet we are, or how trivial we think our ideas might be, and that in many ways we are our brother and sister's keeper, can actually be a powerful step in the right direction towards fostering a sense of community and a sense of wellness. To Coach Shaka Smart, thank you again for an enlightening conversation, and to the listeners, thank you for joining. Stay well.
This discussion is not intended to replace professional medical advice, and views of guests are their own. If you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, get help immediately or call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Gregory Scott Brown, MD, is a resident in general psychiatry at the Dell Medical School, a fellow with the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine, and author of the blog Green Psychiatry in Psychology Today. Follow him on Facebook or Twitter at Gregory S. Brown, MD, or visit his website at gregoryscottbrown.com.